Hello, welcome everyone. Today we have a very special guest, someone that I'm sure that if you work in the design or creative space, that he doesn't need an introduction, and I'm sure that by accident you have watched one of his videos. So let me start. He's a creative, entrepreneur, educator, and I remember that once I saw on his Instagram profile that he defined himself as an educator as well. He has a massive community following him through the social networks from YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well. He also is the CEO of the Future Education and Blind, which is a design agency based in Santa Monica. So please, guys, let me welcome Chris to the podcast. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing good, Juan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for being with us. I know your time is super valuable, so I don't want to waste in talking, but letting you talk. So, Chris, how do you introduce yourself?
It depends on who I'm talking to. So, what are we talking about?
Well, I think that we have people from the creative design space, entrepreneurs, maybe creatives, designers.
Okay, so if we were just meeting for the first time, I would say, hi, my name is Chris Do. I'm the founder of The Future, an online education platform. Our mission is to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love without feeling gross.
What were your first steps into the design space as a child? Do you start painting the walls of your house, scribbling on paper? How did this all start?
Yeah, so I want everybody to keep in mind, I'm almost 50 years old. So when I was a child, some of the things that we take for granted today, like the internet, apps, powerful tools, hardware, software, all that stuff is available today. But back when I was a kid, it started with pencil and paper, and I love to draw, I love to doodle, and to try to express myself. And I fell in love with comic books, and I thought for a long time I was going to be a comic book illustrator. There's only one real problem with that, in that I'm not a very good illustrator. So I would study these drawings, but because I didn't have any formal training, I just never thought I could actually make it that high as an illustrator. So I put my dreams on hold for a while. And it wasn't until I worked at a silk screening place designing and making t-shirts that I understood what design was and its potential. The incorporation of illustration, photography, and lettering, typography, bringing all that together, that really excited me. So when I met in real life the very first professional graphic designer, my mind was blown, because now I had a career path and a profession, and I could see, and not that I would touch him, but I could touch this human being doing the thing that I never thought possible.
So how do you get your first client, and what kind of work was it?
Yeah, so I've had people who've given me money for services, but I'm going to define it in a professional context, because I was going to community college. I think I'm 18 years old at this point. I had just learned Adobe Illustrator and all this PageMaker. So now I had some professional skills. And just through the family and friends network, people would say, can you help us out with a flyer or brochure or something else? And that's when I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. Let me try. And that's kind of where my professional freelance career began.
So I know that working with clients could be tough. Could you tell us any funniest story, or what's the funniest story that you have working with clients, and what was the biggest one?
Well, I've had some nightmare clients. I've had some dream clients. I'm not sure I'd categorize many of them as funny. I'll tell you one story. It's a little anecdote. So I've graduated now from Art Center. I've discovered motion design, and I'm introduced to what would then become the most famous main title designer in the world, living or dead. His name's Kyle Cooper. And he liked my typography, so he wanted me to work on this new movie called The Eraser. And it was starring Arnold Schwarzenegger back when he was still a big screen star, right? And I had designed these storyboards, and I was working really late, and we were just doing this really simple effect of like titles erasing on the screen. He thought this was brilliant. Let's just do this. And so he said, I'm going to go and meet and present this title to Arnold and the producers. So then after he presented, I talked to him, and I said, how did it go, Kyle? And he said, you know what? They said they hated it. They hated the work. And because I worked on it, I felt really bad because the night before, he's like, I'm not sure about this color green that you're using because there's a really intense color green. But Kyle, the true professional, had said, okay, we understand you hate the title. What is it about it that you hate? And Arnold looks at him for a little bit and he says, I just don't like the color green. And that's when Kyle said, so if I change the color to something else, like maybe a blue, would you be okay with it? He goes, yeah, then I would love it. So it's kind of interesting. When people express their feelings about your work, they don't always have the language to describe to you exactly what they're feeling. A true professional steps in and says, okay, I get it. I'm not going to react to this, but I want to respond in a thoughtful way. So then he just asks them, like, what is it about this idea that you hate? And simply the color. That's when he called me up and said, just change the color from green to blue, and we're going to sell this through. So that was the first big main title job that I had completed.
I know everyone loves to talk about their success, but I really think that everyone has failures as well. What do you think was your biggest one?
Sure. If anybody's been in business for long enough, has worked at a certain level and a profile, you're going to make mistakes, and I've had plenty of mistakes that I've made. I made mistakes on starting a job before people have paid me. I made mistake on not listening to my gut feeling when a client was sending me the wrong feeling, only later for that client to burn me and not pay me for the work that I had done. So those are basic kind of starting mistakes. But if I have to think about it, the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my career is something that I only came to the realization just a few months ago. Now keep in mind, I've been running my business since 1995, so it's taken a long time for me to figure out what my biggest mistake is. And I'll tell it in a story form, okay? A couple of months ago, I was at the office, and I'm not at the office anymore because we're under lockdown. So I go in and I see the flashing red light on my phone, which means somebody has left me a voicemail. Like, who's leaving me a voicemail? People don't call me these days. I check the voicemail, and it's from my real estate broker, the person who helped me to buy this house. And I haven't talked to him in a while, but that was like many, many years ago. So his name is Robert. He's one of the most successful real estate brokers in the area in which I live. So he leaves a message. He says, hi, Chris, it's Robert. That's his name, Robert. I'm just calling in to say hello. And I don't know if you know this, but I just wanted to wish you happy anniversary. It's been 14 years since you purchased this house. And I thought that was just a neat little fun fact. I just want to let you know, if you need anything in terms of real estate, feel free to give me a call. Just checking in on you. Say hi to Jesse and the kids for me. And that was it. So he hung up the phone. And I thought to myself, wow, that's kind of like a nice little gesture. I know it's a sales call. I know he wants to remind me that he's still doing this and that if I have something for him, I should call him. I should recommend him for something. But it made me think that that little gesture, that act, was how he has been able to build up a very powerful and strong network of relationships. We talk about design and clients as relationships. And it made me reflect. In my life, I've done probably over $85 million of business in running a design company, which I thought was like pretty cool. But then I thought to myself, when was the last time I called a client up unsolicited or volunteered to spend time with them? And that's when I came to the realization. My biggest mistake in running my business is not understanding the value of a personal relationship with the clients. I mistakenly assumed that they pay me to do a job, that the best customer service that I can provide to them is to do an amazing job, to go over and beyond, above and beyond everything else they could ask for and deliver delight. And once I finished doing that, and they were very happy with the work, I never really made an effort to hang out with them. It's because I'm an introvert. I'm a little bit of a hermit. I just like to spend time by myself. So even client dinners and functions, I generally just refuse. I don't go. I send my team to go. So now that I'm not doing a lot of client work anymore, I start to realize how much more successful we might have been had we spent a little bit more time building those personal connections and relationships that are coming from a genuine place of care and concern. And I would say now that's the biggest mistake.
So Chris, I would like to talk about business and design. You know, with COVID-19, things are getting a little bit crazy and different, you know? And it seems like we are all the design agencies and creative agencies in the same space because we are all connected to the internet. So what do you think is going to be the future in our space for the next 3 to 4 years? Because it seems like for a client in the US, it is the same to buy from you, from your agency, for example, or buy from another agency in a cheaper country. You know what I mean? For example, in a South American country, or I don't know, Vietnam, kind of like that. So how do you see is going to be the future for the design and creative space?
Yeah. Okay. Good question, Juan. So I want you to know that you compete with everybody. That's what you just said. And you compete with nobody. And this really depends on how you position yourself about your mindset and your body of work. Because yes, we're all connected to the internet. And if we looked for these options, we would find a lot of resources for creative people to do work for us. But we have to realize that clients don't spend the same amount of time and energy looking at all the things that we look at. So what happens ultimately is the clients hire who they know, who they like, and who they trust. So the act of getting known is really important. And getting known isn't just showing your body of work or awards you've won. Simon Sinek talks about this. And he's like, it's very important to know that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And he said, okay, let's look at a very important job. If you're a family person and you have a young child, you're going to hire a babysitter because you want to go out and you have somebody look after your child. And so if you had two candidates to consider to look after your most important thing, this human being, this little child of yours, the thing that you hold highest, who would you hire? Number one is a teenage girl that has grown up in the neighborhood that you've seen grow up from a little child. Number two is maybe a professional nanny from another country whose job and his background and his training is to look after kids. He said most of you would pick the girl that you know, even though she's grossly underqualified compared to the professional nanny, because you know something about her beliefs, her values, you've seen her grow up, so you have developed trust in this person.
So it seems like about what you're saying that everyone needs to like have a personal brand, you know, like you do your work and also you have a personal brand where you can tell your story and tell the world what you do, what your beliefs are, and like what are you stand for. Mm-hmm. It's kind of...
Yeah, I think a lot has changed in the last 10 years. It used to be that the best and the fastest way for you to tell people about who you are is to buy an ad, a TV spot, a radio spot, print ads in magazines and billboards, bus boards. And that was the best way because for a long time that was the only way. And there's certain deep-rooted patterns of behavior here. But now more than ever, having a direct line of communication with your potential audience and customers and hopefully one day your fans has never been easier. And so companies and brands are starting to come to this realization that they can have a dialogue, not a monologue, where we can talk back and forth almost in real time in many instances. And then people can make the decision for themselves. Do I like you? And do I trust you? And so there's a lot of opportunity here for creative people to help these brands and companies tell their story across the different platforms, from podcasts to videos on YouTube to posts on LinkedIn and writing articles. Basically, all of this is called content marketing. And the new way of thinking about this is, don't sell me. Don't pitch me. Don't try to convince me of what it is that you do. Just teach me something. Tell me something that's going to help me in my life. Empower me to achieve my goals. And if you can do that, I'm going to have a really close relationship with you. And we think about this like companies like Apple. And Apple is a very beloved company. And how do we know that? Because people put their stickers on their products or on other products like on their car and the bumper sticker or a notebook. That's telling people I'm a member of the tribe. This is our badge. And we have secret symbols and languages that we use with each other. And the other reason why I know people love Apple is because how they feel about it. It's an inanimate object that you're talking about with transistors and chips, microchips and plastic and metal. You should not have a feeling about it, but people do. They have an emotional connection to this thing for a lot of different reasons. The third reason why I know people love Apple, they're willing to go out of their way to buy Apple products, to go to the Apple store and to pay a premium for their products. And they've done this because I feel like they've empowered me. I use their tools to connect with people, to talk to my friends and my family. I use their tools to communicate with others via social networks. I use their tools to make a living. And a company that can do that for me, I feel a deep personal, emotional connection with. So this is the opportunity that exists for everybody that's in business right now, because you have an opportunity to help people. But you have to stop selling, and you have to start serving. You have to help the people that you describe as your community, as your audience, as your potential customers. You have to serve them better.
So it seems like from some people into the creative or design space, Apple is not the same company because Steve Jobs left almost 10 years ago or 10 years ago. So what is your, it's not my vision, but what's your vision of that? How do you see it? How do you see Apple, for example, in these days?
Sure. I think it's very hard for a company to continue on in the exact same spirit when its founder has passed. And a founder as influential, as iconic as Steve Jobs is, and he's brilliant in many things that he does. And one of the best things that he offered the world was this vision of the future that's better than what we have. He's very charismatic. He's a great storyteller. He understands ultimately what makes people tick. And when he returned to Apple after having been kicked out of his own company, their marketing, their messaging, and their product line started to change very drastically. They stopped trying to compete against PCs in measuring things like how fast the clock speed was, how much RAM, how many process, or how many numbers it can crunch. And they moved to something like 1,000 songs in your pocket and think different. And that started to usher in this modern era, and that people started to reconnect with it. And we got to see that. So we know maybe in our lifetime we don't have that kind of impact on the world, but he gave us a goal to aspire to. He helped us to identify ourselves as part of the Apple tribe. Now, when he passed away, I was like really concerned about the company, because very few people can be Steve Jobs. So what Apple had done was it broke apart, it segmented all the different things that Steve did into different human beings. So Tim Cook is a brilliant operations guy. He knows how to get a supply line up, and he knows how to get products out that are consistent and on schedule. He knows how to do that. I don't think he's a visionary. I don't think he's a design aesthete where he's so really concerned about all the minutia. But then they had Johnny Ive do that. And so they split up all parts of Steve into a way that is necessary for all companies, because companies can't be dependent on a single person. There has to be some kind of succession plan in case the person retires, quits, gets fired, or dies. But I think, to me at least, Apple's still the same great company that I love. And I know that they don't have these amazing, game-changing ideas anymore. And that's okay, because actually most companies that are this big and successful, they can't keep up that pace of innovation. It's going to be some young upstart that has a fresh idea, that's willing to gamble and risk a lot of things. And we don't hear about the thousands of them that fail. We only hear about the one or two that succeed. Then we say they're the new Apple, right? And right now, I think the new Steve Jobs is probably Elon Musk, right? But I still have great passion and affection for the products. And now, to Tim Cook's credit, he's done a lot of things that Steve would have never done. Now, for better or for worse, Steve was a bit of a tyrant. He did not treat people well. And there's books and videos and movies written about this, right? So we know that. And I think, for as far as I know, Tim has run a company in a much more egalitarian way. He's treated people better. He's promoted people. He's brought up issues that are social issues, like he came out of the closet. He talked about him being gay, and they're trying to run a company that I think is more ecologically and ethically minded. So for that, I think that's pretty wonderful, and he's done many things like that.
So I'm gonna ask you, what's your favorite brand in the world right now and why?
Okay, I'm probably the ideal target market for any marketer because I love the whole process of a company trying to establish themselves and to reach out to me. I'm open to new ideas. I have discretionary income and I want to study and consume all of their marketing and their messaging, right? So if there's a marketer out there who's trying to sell a new product or idea, I'm your ideal person because I will try stuff and I try stuff all the time. So, and I'm a big brand guy. So there's lots of brands that I love, that I like, and that I will consistently buy from. But for right now, I think, and we've mentioned it before, probably my favorite brand currently is Tesla and the things that Elon Musk is trying to do, because he's doing it in a way that I think many entrepreneurs could learn from, because he's basically figured out a way to eliminate or reduce fossil fuel consumption and the production of CO2 emissions. And he's done it in a way where he's sharing his technology and he's trying to build the infrastructure. He's got a really long range plan. And when you step back and you start to look at it, he wasn't trying to create a car company. He's trying to solve a really big problem. And then he's working on innovative solutions for batteries and solar roofs. So he's not just thinking about like a very small product, he's thinking about an ecosystem. How these all these parts are connected. But he started with something where he knew he could probably have a hit and make some money, and then he can leverage that success and do things that other people don't think are sexy or worthwhile to look at. But he most definitely has been thinking about the entire product ecosystem and the chain from beginning to end. Where do we get this power from that's fueling these cars? Well, initially it's through fossil fuels and producing energy that way. So solar power. How do we store and preserve that energy? Because so much energy is collected on Earth, but not saved or stored. So then the battery part. Well, now that we've got that whole ecosystem figured out, well, we still have this problem with traffic and congestion. So he starts the boring company to build underground tunnels. There could be a vast network underground, and we can solve that kind of problem. So he's thinking in ways that I think I wish more leaders would think of, which is not to just stay in a very narrow category, but to think much bigger and to have these really long-range plans.
So, talking about Elon Musk, what do you think? Um, that he does all that, because he's doing it all that at the same time, and he's planning to go into Mars. Like, it's huge. Do you think it's about his confidence, the way he thinks? How do you see that?
No, I think it's a lot more than just confidence, because a lot of people have confidence and they can't do anything, and then they just get really annoying. Okay, I think at the heart of it, Elon's a scientist, and scientists look at things very differently than your average person. They look at a problem, they look at feasibility, and they organize a team of experts, and then they start to make tests and experiments, and they measure that. So every time you sit down and you hear Elon talk about something, it's not just like a wish and a hope and self-confidence. It's really like, no, I've really thought about it, and this is how it's going to happen. And a lot of scientists and physicists know that the rate of innovation is happening faster than the human mind can even comprehend. So he has that rare combination of smarts, right? He's learned things. He's a scientist. He's a visionary in that he has these big ideas, but he's not just a dreamer. He can actually do it. He's had success, and he's actually, in his own way, a very charismatic person as well. So he knows how to tell the story of what it is that he wants to do in ways that make other people care.
So yeah, but I don't see him as a storyteller. So do you see him as a storyteller?
I would disagree with you. Now, there are a few storytellers that could be measured to Steve Jobs. If I asked you to name 5, you would probably have struggled to do that. So we have to take Steve Jobs off the table as the point of reference, just to say that that's an anomaly. I think he's a wonderful storyteller, and I'll tell you why. Like, I think he probably has a speech problem. I think he's a super nerdy introvert. I think he probably gets stage fright and all those kinds of things. Things that Steve reveled in. Like he was he was in his element. Okay, but Elon Musk, when he was launching I forget which car he was launching, but he was launching one of his cars, and he started talking about the car, and he said, okay, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to take this back and talk to you about why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to address the single greatest threat to human existence on Earth. And he talks about this whole idea about like how much energy is being hit, how much energy just from the sun is hitting the planet. And he says, well, it's the size of this area that can power the entire world. And he says, it's not even that much. You just need a consistent source of light, and desert areas are perfect for that, right? Because he's like, we need things that are stable. There's no earthquakes and no tornadoes. He just talks about it, and he gets people to really care about what it is he's doing from a science point of view. And as you know, a lot of scientists are kind of boring. They get too geeky in their talk, but he's able to do that. And to think about the number of cars he's actually sold relative to these big automakers, it's a tiny fraction. So why is it one of the most valuable car companies? It's because we believe in him, because he told us a story that we care about. So if you say like he's not a good storyteller, then why are people valuing the company as much as it is?
So it's like, I think that Mark Zuckerberg has something with connecting the war with Facebook. Do you hear that?
I think I heard a little bit of that, but Mark Zuckerberg, let's talk about Zuckerberg. Facebook's obviously a very powerful, successful company. We know the creation story of Facebook, but what does Mark Zuckerberg think? What is he trying to do?
So do you have any tip that maybe the people from our audience can get to be a little bit more visionary?
Yeah. I don't have a formula for how to be a visionary, but I can encourage you and share some ideas about how you can have more breakthroughs on a personal level. I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to become much, much more risk tolerant. You don't have to be risky, but to be risk tolerant, to accept that failure is a part of growth and innovation. And so if you're not doing things that scare you, that routinely fail, you're stuck in a holding pattern. And that's really important. So if you surround yourself with people and ideas that scare you, that are always pushing forward just by the law of averages, you will start to become like them. Jim Rohn said that if you want to know who you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So take a step back and look at who you're spending time with. Now, current situations and circumstances that we're spending time with family. So let's just pause on that idea. But prior to COVID, who you're spending time with? Were you spending a lot of time with thinkers, innovators, scientists, artists, people who are challenging norms in all fronts and pushing those boundaries? If you are, then great. You're already on the right path.
So, Chris, anything else that you're interested in to tell to our audience, so the people that is watching right now?
The only thing I have to say to all your listeners is if you've enjoyed this conversation, I'm a little rocky or bumpy this morning here, I have to admit, that go check us out on YouTube and watch some of our videos. It's at The Future is Here. The Future's not spelled with an E, and everybody asks like, where did the E go? I said we dropped the ego. That's Future's Futur. You can follow me on social media. I'm at the Chris Do, D-O.